Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Dynamics 365 Tech Talk. Today's topic is What's Changed in Dynamics 365 Human Resources? Part 1, Functional. This is part 1 in a two-part series. To register for part 2, please find the link in the Q&A panel. My name is Tim, and I will be your moderator today. We are broadcasting this session through Teams live events, and the audio can be heard through your device speakers. This session is being recorded on behalf of the Microsoft Corporation. When you join this event, your name, email address, and/or phone number may be viewable by other session participants in the attendee list. By joining, you are agreeing to this experience. The recording will be made available on the TechTalk's Community Dynamics page within the coming weeks. If you have questions for our presenters or need support, please use the Q&A panel located on the right side of your screen. Our presenters will be responding to your questions throughout the session and in a live segment at the end of the presentation. Thank you for your patience during these announcements. Presenting for us today from Microsoft, we have Rachel Profitt, Senior Program Manager. Rachel, over to you to get us started.
Thanks, Tim. And hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be joining from. I am excited to be here today. Again, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Rachel Profitt. I am a Senior Fast Track Solution Architect here at Microsoft, and I do have my contact information here on the slide. I do invite you to connect with me on Twitter. You can find my YouTube channel at Dynamics 365 Unbox, find me on LinkedIn, or check out my blog at dynamics365lady.com. Before we dive in today, a quick couple reminders and tips for you. If you're not already familiar with our Dynamics 365 implementation guide, we invite you to check it out. You can find that at https://aka.ms/d365 implementation guide. Another quick reminder before we dive in, as all of you are joining a tech talk about human resources, hopefully you are already aware of this, but if you are not already aware, it's very important that you be made aware. The standalone human resources infrastructure migration has been migrated into the finance and operations infrastructure. And what this means is that you, if you are using the standalone Dynamics 365 human resources application, which is using a different infrastructure than other finance and operation apps, such as finance or supply chain management, those customers and those environments will need to be migrated. The deadline for performing that migration is December 31st of this year, 2023. If you have not already started analyzing and your migration process, we do strongly recommend that you get started today. And we've got some great guidance and information, as well as some other tech talks available out there. The link to that article is out in this slide, and we'll make sure it gets posted into the Q&A panel for you as well. Again, really important, all customers will be required to migrate their standalone human resources infrastructure environments by December 31st, 2023 to the new infrastructure. So like Tim said, this is a series. When we originally published this, it wasn't going to be a series, but we created so much amazing content for you all that we had to split it up into two parts. So today's session is going to be focused on the functional aspects of what's different between the standalone human resources infrastructure. And tomorrow's session, which is happening tomorrow morning, is going to be focused on the technical differences between the human resources infrastructure and the finance and operations infrastructure. If you aren't already registered for that session, we do encourage you to do so, and we will make sure a link to that is posted in the chat for you as well. We will be recording both sessions, and both recordings will be available for you out on the Dynamics 365 Tech Talk community page, so keep an eye out for that if you aren't able to join us at tomorrow's session. Taking a quick look at the agenda for today, we'll be starting out by talking about the user interface differences that you'll see between the two applications. Then we're going to dive into the specifics around the differences in the functionality for recruiting. We'll then switch gears to the financial setup. As many of you may be aware, there's a number of financial setups that happen in standalone infrastructure that are a little bit different in the F&O infrastructure. And then we'll take a look at system administration and security. A little bit closely related, but these are all things that you manage and do right from inside of the application. So with that, let's go ahead and dive right in and start taking a look at the user interface differences. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about, and we've got two screenshots here on the slide. On the left-hand side, and this is pretty consistent throughout the whole presentation, what you see on the left-hand side is the standalone HR environment, and what you see on the right-hand side is the new and updated experience that you see in finance and operations. So the first major difference that you'll notice when you're logging into Dynamics 365 Human Resources on the new merged infrastructure is the left-hand navigation pane. You'll notice on the left navigation pane over here on the left, we've got a list of the various different modules. However, now you will find all of those or most of those things inside of Human Resources, and they are workspaces now inside of Human Resources. So to navigate to people, employee development, and so on, you'll first navigate to Human Resources and then select the appropriate workspace. You can still access all of those workspaces as tiles from your homepage, so that experience hasn't changed. But if you're used to using the left-hand navigation, there are some differences. You'll also notice that we do still have the organization administration module, and if the screenshot isn't big enough to see, but there's also a system administration module. Now, another thing that you may have noticed about this screenshot when we looked at finance and operations is that there are a number of additional features and modules that show up in that left-hand navigation pane. This is not a complete list that you see on screen, but these are just some examples. So you'll notice that you can see accounts payable and accounts receivable, along with all these other finance related and supply chain and commerce and project operations related modules. For most users, they won't actually see these modules if they've got security roles assigned to them. But as an administrator, when you log in, you will be able to see all of the modules and features across all of the finance and operations products. One thing that's important to note is that the employee role specifically grants more access than the employee role in the standalone HR infrastructure. So there might be a need to modify the employee role to remove access to additional pages that are not needed. Another thing that I want to point out on this are the common and questionnaire modules. So the common module, you can see it in this screenshot here. They're alphabetized, the modules are, but the common module is where you'll find things like case management, calendars, and other things that are used throughout the system and are not specific to human resources. The questionnaire module is where you'll find all of the objects specific to questionnaire, which you used to find in a few different places in the standalone human resources infrastructure. Now all of those menu items are in their own module to make them quick and easy to find. So the next page that I want to take a look at is the personnel management workspace. Hopefully most of you are aware we made some shifts in one of our last releases in the last few months to move from horizontal scrolling in workspaces to vertical scrolling in workspaces. And so that difference has been in the standalone human resources infrastructure for a little while. However, the personnel management workspace had a special look and feel and design that didn't align with the look and feel of other workspaces. So this workspace has actually been redesigned to align with the same look and feel that we have inside of finance and operations, so that you have a consistent look and feel across all of your workspaces. So the first thing that I want to point out is that In the old workspace, across the top, we had links with numbers on them, which are the equivalent to the tiles that we have. So the employees and contractors, you'll find them by default at the end of the tile list in that personnel management workspace. I've called them out here with the red box and the arrows. The open positions is also a tile, but you'll notice that that one is the third one from the end over in finance and operations. Approvals is now called work items assigned to me, so it's no longer called approvals, but that's where you will be able to see all of the work items that are assigned to you, whether they are approvals or tasks. And then we also have the address changes tile. So if you do, if you've got the parameter set to monitor address changes, this is where you'll see those, and you can click on that to open up the detail page where you can drill into those details. Now, the next thing you'll notice is that we had many different tabs across the top of that workspace. Those tabs can still be found as tabs in this workspace. The main tab is now called Summary, where it used to be called Activity, but the rest of them still have the same name as what they had in the standalone human resources infrastructure. The next thing you'll notice is the relocation of the buttons. So these buttons were embedded, down below that like ribbon pane, we'll call it, in the standalone infrastructure to hire an employee or a contractor. And those buttons have moved to the action pane to be at the very top and aligned to the far left in the page. The next thing that I want to call out is the tiles that you see on this page have moved into the various link tabs or navigation tabs that you see along the left-hand side when you're inside of the new personnel management workspace. Candidates to hire is now called pending. Rather than candidates to hire. And the other statuses that you see here align pretty well. And should be easily recognizable, but you will notice that there are some additional things that you'll see in this tab, such as on leave and FMLA leave. So those are two new tabs that you have in the new finance and operations infrastructure for human resources that you did not have before. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about on this one is the recruiting requests. So the recruiting requests and starting soon tabs the recruiting request tab is no longer available along the top of the screen in the workspace. And additionally, there's no longer a tab for workers that are starting soon. So those two have been removed, but you can still navigate and use these features. It's just the way you navigate to them is now different in the merged infrastructure. All right. Up next, I want to talk a little bit about the calendar navigation. So calendars in Dynamics 365 Human Resources were found underneath the Organization Administration module. And then there was a section there called Calendars, and that's where you could find the 3 pages called Calendars, Holidays and Closures, and Non-Work Time. All of those links have now been relocated into the Leave and Absence module. So if you navigate into either the Leave and Absence module or the Leave and Absence workspace and click to the Links tab, that's where you'll find those links to get to Calendars, Holidays and Closures, and Non-Work Time. All right, the next difference from a user interface that I want to talk about for you is the feature management workspace. The feature management workspace has been around for a while, but one key difference that you will notice with Dynamics 365 in the merged infrastructure is that you will see all of the features. So in the standalone, you would only see things that were related to human resources or system administration or organization administration, whereas now you're going to see a lot of different features related to all of the different modules. If you haven't purchased licenses to those products, it doesn't really affect you. Like, you can enable them. However, you won't be able to use those features and functionalities unless you actually purchase the licenses. We don't filter the list down based on which licenses you have in your particular environment or assigned to your particular user. All right, so the next user interface difference that I wanted to talk about is the organization administration module. There are a lot of differences that you'll notice in this particular module. On the left-hand side, you can see that we have an organization administration module, which includes some basic human resources org admin functions like positions, jobs, departments. The global address book and calendars are located there as well. However, in the new merged infrastructure, you'll notice that there are a lot more options available in this module. We're not going to spend a lot of time talking about what all these additional features and things are. Some of these things might have been found in the system administration module, in the standalone infrastructure, number sequences being one of those. Many of them are still the same, but they might be rearranged. You'll also notice some additional features that you didn't have before, like electronic reporting and a periodic folder and a setup folder, just to name a few examples. The functionality of many of these features are documented out in the learn.microsoft.com site. So if you're interested in learning more about those specific features that have been added and are available to you now in the merged infrastructure, I do encourage you to do that. You can always use the help icon from a page to help find documentation about some of those features as you navigate throughout the system. All right, so the next module and difference that I wanted to talk about is the system administration module. Again, when we look at the system administration module, and it looks like our screenshots might be flip-flopped on this, the right is the standalone infrastructure screenshot and the left is the merge, so we actually accidentally flip-flopped them. You'll notice on the right-hand side, we do have a pretty large list of links and things that are available in the system administration module in standalone, and by and large, they're all exactly the same. The same options are still available in finance and operations, but the exact placement in the module might be a little bit different. The other thing that I'll point out is that we have additional workspaces. So you'll notice in the standalone infrastructure on the right, you have the default dashboard and the session date and time. However, in the merged infrastructure, which we see in the left in this case, we have system administration, data management, feature management, and optimization advisor. While the data management workspace was available and you could get to it from the main menu in standalone, it's actually linked there as a specific workspace. There are some additional features and things that you'll find here in the administration module. One that I'll just call out is like the business events catalog and the business events parameters. There are some additional features and functionality here that you can use with business events and data events that you did not have available to you in the in the standalone infrastructure. So some additional things there, but by and large, many of these are exactly the same. If you, we're not going to go into great detail on a lot of these, but if you do have questions or looking for information about one of these specific pages or features, we do encourage you to look for the help out on the Learn site to learn more about those additional features that are available. All right. So now what I want to do is switch gears and talk a little bit about recruiting. Last year sometime, I believe it might have even been the year before, I can't remember, it's all blurring together, we introduced some new recruiting functionality. However, for those of you who might be familiar with the finance and operations apps, the human resources module in that merged infrastructure before the merge had some additional recruiting functionality. And so there's really two different types of recruiting functionality. So there's the recruitment projects, which is what was available in the finance and operations infrastructure human resources module before the merge. And then we introduced the recruiting request feature in standalone. Now in Dynamics 365 that we've merged the two together, you actually can choose between the two recruiting experiences for your implementation. So the default option that will be turned on when you deploy a brand new environment is the recruitment projects. That's the legacy functionality. The reason for this is we didn't want to break any customers that were already using the finance and operations apps. And that functionality. So if you want to use recruiting requests, you can do that, but you will need to enable it in feature management as a first step. When we think about the differences in functionality between the two features, the recruitment projects is really focused on filling open positions. It uses a concept of applicants and applications. And it does not include any APIs out of the box. That's not to say that you couldn't develop or extend the application to create APIs to integrate with a third-party ATS. But when we look at recruiting requests on the other side, this is more of a manager self-service request process. So rather than filling a position that is open, you can use the recruiting requests process for your managers to request that they need a new position to be recruited for from the manager self-service or the My Team tab in employee self-service experience. From a data standpoint, it uses different entities and tables as well. The concept that we use here is called candidates rather than applicants and applications. And candidates go through a process and become employees. The recruiting request process does include APIs. So our applicant tracking system APIs or ATS APIs are available. We have included a link here to both of the docs articles or learn articles that explain the functionality, how to set up and use them. So if you're not familiar and want to compare and contrast in more detail, those are two great resources for you to use. What's important to note is that we've added some new parameters for you to be able to choose which recruitment experience you want to use in your implementation. If you are migrating from the standalone human resources infrastructure and you're using the recruitment request experience, that migration will automatically enable this. But if you're a partner and you're implementing new for a customer, this will be a key decision that you'll need to make at the beginning of your implementation. So to choose which recruitment experience you want to use, you're going to navigate into the human resources parameter page found underneath the setup area of the human resources module. Then on the recruitment tab, you're going to select the recruitment enabled option. And once you enable the recruitment option, there's a drop-down box there where you can choose the desired experience. And that's where you're going to click in the drop-down box and choose between recruitment projects or recruitment requests. You can optionally click the button that you see at the top called Set Experience for All Companies if you want to use the same experience across all legal entities. And that will automatically go mark the checkbox and set all of the legal entities to the same value that you have selected here. What this does is makes it so if you have lots of legal entities, you don't need to navigate into each one to select those options. But you do have that flexibility. So if one legal entity wants to use recruitment projects and another legal entity wants to use recruitment requests, you would be able to do that. Just keep in mind if you're integrating or you are using both, like you have two different sets of tables and two sets of business processes that would need to be defined in those various different legal entities. All right. So now we're going to move on and talk a little bit about the differences that you'll find between the standalone infrastructure and the merged infrastructure in relation to the financial setup. When you were running the standalone human resources app, it was important that you set up some very basic financial dimensions and some HR parameters to tell the system how you wanted those things to work. That data may, if you were just only using Dynamics 365 human resources, you didn't need to create a chart of accounts and some of those other things that are required in Dynamics 365 Finance. So it was 2 basic steps, not a whole lot of flexibility, and oftentimes that data would have been integrated into another solution. Now, in the merged infrastructure with human resources, the set of steps that are required are a little bit longer, as you can see, and each of these actually has a hyperlink to the docs articles or the learn articles that explain how to set each of those things up. If you are migrating from standalone human resources infrastructure to the merged infrastructure, we actually do these steps for you automatically. We automatically create a new chart of accounts. We create your financial dimensions from the financial dimensions that you had in your standalone, and we create an account structure and just stick all of your dimensions in it. However, if you do also use finance and operations, the default values that we create and for you so that you can just minimally operate the system may not be what you actually want. So if you are deploying a brand new environment directly on the merged infrastructure, these steps will actually have to be followed. You will have to configure your currencies and exchange rates and create a fiscal calendar and configure the ledger. These steps have to be done in each legal entity. You can create one chart of account and one set of financial dimensions and account structures and share them across all of them, but your fiscal calendar and the ledger, well, again, your fiscal calendar can technically be shared as well, but the ledger is legal entity specific. So if you have many legal entities, you'll have to repeat that step in each one of your legal entities. In order to not make this a big, giant, long tech talk on finance, we're not going to go into a lot of detail here, but if you do have specific questions, we do encourage you to put those in the chat, in the Q&A panel, and we will work to get those questions answered for you. But that is a definite point to understand. Now, another keynote that I want to point out about financial dimensions that's different between HR standalone infrastructure and the merged infrastructure is that your environment does actually need to be in maintenance mode in order to activate a new financial dimension. So if you do have a need to add another financial dimension that you didn't include in your initial implementation, or if it's a brand new implementation and you're setting them up for the first time, that finance and operations environment has to be in maintenance mode, which is done in LCS. And we'll talk more about that process in the LCS technical portion in tomorrow's session. Now, the simplified dimension entry is all about how you want the dimension entry to be experienced in the human resource module and pages. So by default, this parameter is off, but if you turn it on, much like you had parameters in the F&O, sorry, in the standalone environment, you can, if you enable the parameter, you can then choose for each one of your dimensions whether or not you want them to be enabled or disabled. Any financial dimension that is disabled will not show up in the human resource pages, such as workers and positions. So you can choose whether or not each one of those dimensions are disabled or enabled. All right. There are some additional differences that you'll find in the financial setup, and so I wanted to talk through a few of those things now. So one is that the compensation default currency now comes from the ledger. In standalone human resources infrastructure, we had a parameter that you would find in the human resources parameters page, and we took the currency from there. We no longer do that. We now take it from the currency that you specify on the ledger form for each legal entity. Next up is there are some additional parameters for compensation rating. source, and rating. And these are related to a feature that is part of the standalone I keep saying it backwards. This is part of the pay for performance feature that is part of the merged infrastructure that existed before the separation and now the rejoining of the two applications back together. So the pay for performance feature, I've included a link here for you if you want to learn more about that. So if you're in the parameters page and you're on the compensation tab and you see these additional parameters and setup pages, that's what those are for. They're for the pay for performance features. You do have the right to use those as a part of Dynamics 365 Human Resources in the merged infrastructure. And then the last one that I wanted to point out, it's just a renaming of the menu item. So in standalone infrastructure, it was called Financial Dimensions Configuration for Integrating Applications. That's a mouthful. The new name of that same menu item where you do that setup is just called Integration Configuration. All right, so that wraps us up on the financial differences, setup features between the two infrastructures. So now I'm going to switch gears and talk a little bit about the differences that we will find in system administration. So a couple of things that I'm going to talk through, and the first one I want to talk about is the HR and finance and operations system administration modules and security roles are combined. We've got another slide a little bit later on where I'm going to talk a little bit more about this, but this is important to consider, especially if you're using both applications, to make a decision about what makes the most sense for your particular business. If you want to combine all of your finance and operations data with your human resources or keep them separate. Okay. The next one that I want to talk about is lifecycle services. Now, in standalone infrastructure, we had lifecycle services in one whole layout, and we're going to talk more about that in part 2 tomorrow in our technical section. But one thing that's important to note is inside of the system administration module, inside of finance and operations, you will need to manually relink your help system to your new LCS project. So if you're migrating from standalone infrastructure to the new merged infrastructure, you will need to, like, the database will still be pointing to your old LCS project, and you'll now need to point to the new LCS project. In standalone infrastructure, the page where you configured the help settings, it was literally called that. It was called help settings, and that's where you would find it in system administration. However, now in the system administration module, you have to navigate into system parameters and then go to the help settings tab. And that's where you'll see which LCS project you're linked to. So you will need the libraries to be manually updated in your environment, whether you're migrating or you're creating a brand new environment for a brand new deployment. So that's kind of the 2 steps that are required there. The next one is I want to talk about the data connection tab. So the data connection tab needs to be set up in system parameters to manage the connection between Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations apps and the Microsoft Cloud services. And so this is important if you want to use the new Azure Data Lake functionality. So this is not mandatory if you're brand new, but if you want to switch to using the new Azure Data Lake functionality, you'll need to go through that process and set up that data connection so that we can connect your environment to the Azure Data Lake so that you can get access to those Azure services and Power BI and so on from the Azure portal. Not mandatory, but we do encourage you, if you are using BYOD, the bring your own database feature and you're migrating, consider looking at the new Azure Data Lake feature to see if it can meet your requirements and consider switching. And then the last point to make here, and I briefly mentioned it earlier, but the currency setup, which was found in the system administration module in standalone infrastructure, is now found in the general ledger setup module. Okay, so we're going to now switch gears and talk about security. So from a security standpoint, there are a number of differences that we will want to consider in the new merged infrastructure. So the first point I want to talk about is the security role. So the HR and finance and operations system administrator role is combined. So in standalone human resources infrastructure, you had a system administrator role, which gave access to everything in human resources. When you migrate, or if you're deploying a brand new environment on the merged infrastructure, the system administrator role is an out-of-the-box role that you can't actually modify, and it gives access to everything. That means everything in HR, plus everything in finance, supply chain management, commerce, and project operations, because the finance and operations infrastructure includes all the functionality and all the apps and features for all of those products. So with that noted, and I think I clicked backwards, sorry. So the security roles between the two environments are actually different. Administrator is a great example of that. The employee and manager roles are another example of that, where there might actually be conflicts or differences between what you had in human resources and what you get in finance and operations. So with that, a few recommendations and tips for you. One is verify and update your user assignments per your business requirements. So if it doesn't make sense for your HR admins to have full system administration to all the F&O and SCM and finance and everything else in your environment, you may want to consider making a new admin role that you assign to those users that only includes the human resources functionality. One easy way to do this is to create a new security role and then add all of the human resources related roles that you are using, or the out-of-the-box ones, as sub-roles into the new role that you created. And so that's optional. You don't have to create new admin roles, but if you want to create admin roles to separate and have one HR admin and a separate finance admin or a separate supply chain admin, you can do that by creating a new security role and only giving that new admin role access to the right things that they need access to. But like I said, the admin role, the system administration role in the merged infrastructure includes everything. So carefully consider if that's what you want. It's also important to note that the out-of-the-box employee and manager roles include additional features. So while it doesn't take away any access that you might have had in the human resources, we have additional modules and features that are given to employees and managers. One example is the expense management module. So if you're not planning to use the expense management module, you'll want to consider if that makes sense. It might confuse your users that they now see these additional pages that they can't actually use in your merged infrastructure environment if you've never set them up. So if you would like to keep the exact same security role that you have in your standalone human resources infrastructure environment before your migration, what we recommend is that you actually make a copy of the role. If you're using the out-of-the-box role, you can make a copy of it and call it, name it appropriately for your company employee and your company manager role. And when you migrate, the original employee and manager roles will have additional functionality, but you can now assign your copied versions that you created to your users rather than the out-of-the-box roles, which will keep their security exactly the same as what you have in your standalone human resources infrastructure. All right, next up, I want to talk a little bit about data security. So data security is still role-based. So in the standalone human resources infrastructure, it's still just a big single database, and all of your data is stored in that. And no users have access to the Azure SQL database, just like you don't have access to that in your standalone environment, but there are some differences that you'll notice. By and large, the security infrastructure is exactly the same. The roles that you have in standalone will get copied and moved over, but like I said, there are some additional things that you'll find on certain roles and additional roles all up, right? So like the procurement and sourcing security roles and other things that you don't have access to in standalone. But in the finance and operations application infrastructure, we have an additional feature called extensible data security policies, or XDS policies. We're not going to go into great detail about these, but XDS policies do require development. There are some great docs articles and learn content out there available where you can learn more about these. But the basic idea behind an XDS policy is that it gives you row level security. We do caution that you use XDS policies with care, and they should be tested thoroughly in a test environment. It does require a developer to create these and put the queries on the data, if you will, but that is an option that you have available to you. Another thing that's important to point out is that in the merged infrastructure, you may want to put additional consideration into the PII data that's being stored in your environment, especially if it's a merged environment with finance, supply chain, commerce, and project operations, for example. So you can create custom PowerShell scripts that allow you to either clear or scramble that PII data when you refresh your production environment back down to a sandbox environment. We don't do this for you automatically, as there's different regulations in different countries, and you might have different business requirements based on, you know, how you want to protect that data and who has access to that data in your environment. So you know, it's not an out-of-the-box feature, but you can use those PowerShell scripts and make that part of your build pipeline when you're refreshing environments in LCS. That's a little bit more technical topic that we're not going to get into today, but that is an option and something you will want to consider either on a new deployment or on a migrated or merged environment. The last point that I want to make about data security is specific to securing any of your exported data. This isn't by any means a comprehensive list of all the things that you should consider, but keep in mind that when you export data to your BYOD or an Azure Data Lake, or if you're using like OData connections, if you're using virtual entities or dual write with your standalone human resources infrastructure, you're likely to continue using those in the merged infrastructure. You'll want to make sure that you carefully consider the security for all of those external components. We don't actually, once the data leaves your finance and operations environment, we don't have control of it anymore, so to speak. So if you are using BYOD or Azure Data Lake or the Dataverse with dual write or virtual entities, or any other way that you might be exporting data through integrations, you are responsible for maintaining and securing that data in those external sources on your own. And whether you're using Azure Data Lake or a BYOD with like an Azure SQL database, as an example, there are security tools available to help you secure that data, but it's not automatic. Like there's no security rules out of the box. So carefully consider what makes the most sense for your business when you're thinking about that new migration of your data to this new environment. So with that, we're going to wrap up with a handful of additional resources that we have available to help you learn more about the differences between the standalone human resources infrastructure and the merged finance and operations infrastructure. Again, if you haven't signed up for tomorrow's Tech Talk, where we're going to go through the technical bits of what's changed and what's different, we do encourage you, but we've got a number of great resources available for you. So the resources on this page are primarily technical. The first one here is about developing. So you can now use X++, and we'll talk more about that in tomorrow's. And the extensibility homepage talks a little bit more about how to extend that solution using either X++ or the Power Platform. I will point out all the things that you do today with the Power Platform are still going to be possible on the merged infrastructure. You just have more options, better ALM stories, and so on. Reporting and analytics definitely is an area where there's a lot of improvements and additional features and functionality that you can take advantage of. So I encourage you to check that out. We also have an article here, the ALM Tech Talk. So the application lifecycle management of your finance and operations infrastructure environments is quite different. We'll dive into that a little bit more, but there is a Tech Talk here available where you can learn more about that. Virtual entities, which existed before, has a new look and feel and experience for that as well in the merged infrastructure, which will be covered in tomorrow's session in more detail. And then another link there for the reporting and BI. The second page of resources that we have available for you are a little bit more functional and more about the infrastructure merge. So this first one here, the merging of HR offerings, talks a little bit about how we're bringing the two infrastructures together. So that's a great article if you haven't read that, if you're trying to understand why we merged and what we've merged. There's also the infrastructure merge overview and the FAQ. All great resources to help you understand a little bit more about that functionality. We also have another resource, which is pretty new, actually, the Human Resources Data Entities and Templates, added in version 10.0.32 and later. So we've added a lot of new data entities to help support your merging if you have both human resources and other finance and operations applications like finance, supply chain management, commerce, and project operations. So there's a bunch of new entities, and we've documented those for you there, which will help you with that merge process. And then the last one here is our tech talk that we did, talking more in detail about what the merge is, how to merge and migrate to the new infrastructure. So with that, we do invite you, if you're new to Dynamics 365 and you're looking for more documentation, we do invite you to get a trial, try out the Learn courses that we have, or check out the documentation. And with that, we are going to open it up for questions. And I know we've had quite a few questions come through that we've answered already, and we've got a couple that have not been answered. So let's dive into those now.
Sure. So Rachel, I can speak some of the questions which were asked around the recruitment integrations. So the answers for those are that you can use the APIs for the integration in merge infrastructure, and you can integrate it with LinkedIn or any other system.
Yeah. So another thing to maybe just add to that, we used to have a kind of native LinkedIn connector, which was deprecated in the standalone infrastructure. So that native connector doesn't exist anymore, but like Umar said, we do have the APIs, which you can use to integrate with LinkedIn. Great.
And then, Rachel, there are two questions which I'll hand it over to you. I can speak the questions and you can answer for that. The question is, can performance review process automatically give the final rating instead of user entering it manually?
That is a great question. Tulsi, do you know the answer to that? I don't think there's a way to do that. Like,
yeah, it doesn't. It's currently not linked.
Yeah, I didn't think it was. Is it mandatory to fill the final rating in? Do you know off the top of your head, or can it be skipped?
I believe it depends on how it's set up. I am not 100% sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I seem to recall that it's not technically mandatory. So if you don't want to use it, I do believe, to Tulsi's point, there's a way to configure it that you don't have to fill out the final rating. But if you are looking for an automation kind of solution there where you just automatically want to fill a specific value in there, with the finance and operations infrastructure, you have a few options. One, you could use a Power Automate to automatically fill that field in for you, or you could look to extend the functionality of the performance review using X++. We'll talk more about the technical aspects a little bit more tomorrow, but some of the resources that we've linked to now should help with that. So great question.
Okay, the next question is related to the Teams integration. So the question is that if the Teams integration is still available in merge infrastructure. The answer is given already on the chat window, is that there is a new Teams experience that is we are working on, and that is in the release process and should be available within the finance and operations application in the coming days.
Yeah, Tulsi, do you know, is that part of our April release? Do you know off the top of your head?
I don't have the time frame right now.
Okay, that's okay. We do know that it's coming very soon, so definitely if you are using the Teams integration and you are on the standalone infrastructure, we will have a new experience. And Umar, correct me if I'm wrong, we are planning a tech talk on that as well once it's released.
Yep.
So definitely keep an eye out for that one. If you're not subscribed to Tech Talks, make sure you get subscribed so you're in the loop when we do that Tech Talk.
Yeah. The next question is, any plan for AD integration with EC5HR and EC5 FNO? So yes, this is one of the area where we are currently working right now. So we do know that there are customers who are building it within the custom integrations, but we are working on that, and we will be sharing the timelines and the design in the upcoming months. But there is one feature which we are releasing in coming days.
Great. We had a few new questions come in, Umar. Should we maybe try to address those first?
Yep. So there is one which is pay for performance. Is it linked with performance review rating?
So pay for performance, is it linked with performance review rating? Yes. However, it uses a different list of performance reviews, and it may not be the final rating field that you're thinking of on the performance review. It's a different set of fields and tables where you set up those ratings. And there's a little bit of a disconnect between like the standalone infrastructure's performance reviews and the reviews that drive the pay for performance feature in FNO. I would strongly encourage you to check out the documentation on that. But if you wanted to extend it to use the rating that is on the performance reviews that you might be thinking of in the standalone infrastructure, it wouldn't be a very complex extension likely to achieve that.
Okay. Thank you, Rachel. There are a few more new questions regarding to attachments. So for lift and shift migrations, all of your attachments will be migrated to finance and operation infrastructure. So that will be done through the toolings which is published by Microsoft. If you are doing the consolidation, meaning if you wanted to consolidate your two finance and operations environments and you wanted to migrate the attachments, so recently we have released the new entity for attachments, and I think Rachel was mentioning about that, and you will get the link as well. So you can utilize that entity if you wanted to export the attachments from one finance and operation environments to another finance and operation environments. But for lift and shift migration, that will be supported by the tool.
Yep. So the link that I shared on that previous slide, I can go back there for a moment. This one, human resources, data entities, and templates added in version 10.0.32 and later. That's the article that you can go find and read about those new entities that we've added, including the document attachment ones.
Thank you. There is one new question, and that is, will there be a future development to include a workflow for recruitment requests?
Great question.
Yep.
So on this one, the recruiting process and the like all up is actually an area that we are looking at right now. I would strongly encourage you to make sure you go out there and vote for the ideas, or if there's something specific different that you're looking for, create a new idea. We are actively looking at it and planning something. I can't say specifically if there will be a workflow, but I will say that, you know, enhancements to this recruiting request and the recruitment APIs and that whole onboarding recruiting process is an area that we are looking at to enhance. So your feedback is super important, and make sure you're going out there and voting for those, because we are actively looking at those right now to create our roadmap around that area.
Yeah, and I think for that, if you keep an eye on the Yammer group for human resources, you will get an update as well from Microsoft side, since we are also working on that side as well from the recruitment.
Looks like we had another question come in about whether or not we can integrate finance and operations or human resources with OpenAI ChatGPT-4, and do we have any document or reference? The short answer is absolutely yes, you can integrate with OpenAI and ChatGPT-4. In terms of documentations and reference, we don't have anything specific to Dynamics 365 at this point. However, there is some pretty good documentation about the APIs for ChatGPT. I will see if I can find a link and post that into the chat. It is an area that all of our product teams are evaluating to determine, you know, what we want to do out of the box. So I would expect that, you know, at some point in the future, we'll have more of a roadmap and story to tell there. We don't have anything specific that I think we can share right now. But yeah, great question.
Yeah, and there is one question, Rachel, regarding the retention policy, how the attachments are being retained if you're using a SharePoint, and then there is a detailed question after that as well. But I think from the attachment perspective, if you're using a SharePoint and if you wanted to use it to store your attachments, you can use it and you can apply your policies over there on the SharePoint site for any regulations.
Yeah, definitely. I think to your point, like if you have, you know, strict retention policies to be able to report with various agencies, the two options for document storage with Dynamics 365 in both standalone and in the merged infrastructure with finance and operations infrastructure is that you can either use Azure Blob Storage or SharePoint. For documentation like personnel records and files where there are strict rules and regulations about how you store and how long you store and so on, I would strongly encourage you to look at using SharePoint as your repository. Dynamics doesn't really handle those retention rules and, you know, some of these other things, but SharePoint does have robust capabilities to help with that, including archival, security, etc., to help you be compliant, you know, based on those different rules. And it's far more flexible in the sense that you can have some documents treated one way and other documents treated in a different way. So, yeah, that looks like all of the questions that we had today. So, and we're right at the end of the session. So, you know, we do invite you to stay connected with us. You can find us on LinkedIn. If you're not already following us, we're Fast Track Dynamics 365. You can also follow us on our new YouTube channel. All of our Tech Talks are being posted up to that new YouTube channel. Post the recording, that is at MSD365 Community. And if you haven't already subscribed to our upcoming Tech Talks, we do have more plans specifically around HR. So we do invite you to subscribe at D365 Tech Talk subscribe. And with that, I would like to thank everyone for joining us today, and I will hand it back over to Tim to wrap us up.
Thank you, Rachel. I've posted a link to a short survey in the Q&A panel. We'd love to hear your feedback on today's session and hear what you'd like to see in future events. Thank you for your participation. As a reminder, the recording of today's session will be made available on the TechTalk's Community Dynamics page within the coming weeks. I'd like to extend a big thank you to our presenter, Rachel Profitt, and to you, our audience, for joining us today. We hope you have a great rest of the day ahead.